Hello, my name is David O'Neill. I'm here to talk to you about the project I've been working on throughout this course. It's called Project 360. First, let's talk about the learning challenge. That's high school geometry. So I don't know about all of you, but for me, high school geometry at points was very difficult. So I thought that this would be a good topic to cover. So first, I just wanted to point out some interesting statistics about American students in math. So the first is that American students rate 25th in math compared to students in 27 industrialized countries. The second is 44% of students graduate high school ready for college level mathematics. So let's just take a sec, reread those, and really let that sink in. Those are some startling statistics for a country that considers itself to be a world power. The reason it's startling is because how important math is to everything that we do and to how a country develops and different technologies and engineering and so on and so forth. Um, so yeah, let that sink in and we'll keep. So we're here to talk about geometry. First, I just want to mention why geometry is important. One, it's used in everything that we do, whether that's in our careers, if you're an engineer, construction, interior design, a teacher, pretty much anything, athletes, everyone uses geometry to some degree. It's also used informally in our lives at home. If you are looking to buy a new couch and you know if that's going to fit, that requires geometry. So there's lots of examples. Those are just some brief examples as to why it's important. But so why is geometry so difficult to learn? For some students, this might be the first time that they're being introduced to geometric concepts and proofs, and that can be abstract to them. And it's a new way of thinking, so it's very difficult for them. Um, the second and the second is that the students have a lack of interest in math or a lack of interest in geometry. It's no secret that students just don't have an interest in math that they used to, um, and they're just interested in different subjects now. And the third, there have been some complaints that Common Core standards have caused geometry difficult to learn. But what we're going to do is focus on the second one, the lack of interest, and that's what Project 360 is designed to. So, what is Project 360? It's an interactive learning software that focuses on active learning, and basically what it does is it exposes students to geometric concepts in areas that are of interest to them. So, for example, if the student were interested in sports, they would be able to learn geometry using sports. So if they were doing this unit on circles, they might be asked to calculate the circumference of a basketball. Then they might be asked to calculate, what the circumference of the rim is, and will that size basketball fit inside that basketball rim? Um, and Project 360 is not a tool that's used in substitute to classroom instruction. It's used in addition to it as a supplement. Basically, my intention is for it to be used as for the student to go home and practice with. So, how does Project 360 work? Basically, a quick scenario of how it would work is the student would sit down, their first time logging in, they would register their product, fill out all their relevant information, and then they would be guided through like a startup menu in which the navigation would basically take a quick survey of a couple of questions and ask them, what they're interested in, and then it would pop out basically 3 or 4 different fields that the survey thinks the student would be interested in. They'd be able to select from those fields, and that would be what they would be working in the entire course. So, for instance, like I said, if the student was interested in sports, they might be able to pick a sports theme, and throughout the entire course, the software would use that theme to teach them the different geometric concepts. So moving along, say we're 3 weeks down the road, and now um, they're on a unit about circles. Like I said before, the sports theme again, they'd be using basketballs or baseballs or soccer or something to learn about circles. Um, and at any point in time, the student would have the option to change the theme if they are no longer interested in it. Because again, the whole purpose of this is to um, have the student develop an interest in geometry by appealing to their real world interests. So now the assessment part. How would the assessment work? How would the students be assessed on how well they're doing with the software? It'd be a two-part assessment. One would be a response section. that the student fills out, which you can see on the left here where it says Tim Doherty's responses. And it would just ask basic questions at the end of each unit. For example, how comfortable are you with the different circle formulas and theories? Obviously, that would be a question that would be asked at the end of the circle unit. Another question says, how confident are you that you'll be able to explain this unit's material to your peers? And basically what the student's doing on the right is answering those questions on a scale of 1 to 10. And then a graph is being generated at the bottom to show the student's confidence level based on the responses that he gives. So that gives the teacher, a snapshot of how confident the student is in his or her abilities in that unit. To the right, we have the systems generated performance. Basically what's happening is the system is generating a percentage grade for each student's performance on the unit based on did they get the question right and how many attempts did it take for them to get the question right out of the number of allowed attempts. So you can see in the first one it says, did they get the correct answer? Yes. Number of attempts, 2 out of 10 allowed attempts. That's an 80% grade. At the bottom, again, we have another summary graph that's showing the student's grade for each unit. So basically that gives the teacher a snapshot of, where does the student need some extra attention, and where is the student really excelling. And then there would be a third summary that the teacher would receive that says the total class's performance, so that she or he could look at it and say, okay, the total class only scored as an average 60% in triangles but 100% in squares. So maybe I need to spend more time on triangles. So basically this assessment would be used by the student and the teacher. The student to get a feel for how well they're doing and the teacher to get a feel for how well the entire class is doing. So moving on, some of the impacts and risks that that Project 360 might have. The impacts that I'm really going for are just to create a general interest in geometry, which has kind of been the theme throughout this presentation, is using what the student is interested in the real world to create an interest in geometry. Perhaps it could lead to success in future math courses. If they find out that they actually enjoy geometry, will that success translate into future math courses, or will that interest translate into future math courses? The third impact is I wrote a fundamental change in classroom instruction. And I don't mean a change in the way we do things, but a change in the way that we teach things. Instead of a teacher just writing squares up on the board and popping out formulas on a smart board. Instead, maybe we actually continue to use real-world scenarios and use those formulas to apply to things that students are interested in, not only with the software but in the classroom. So some of the risks associated with this project is that maybe the software won't have options that apply to all of students' interests. The software can only, we can only come up with so many interests that there might be a limited amount, and maybe there's a student who just doesn't have an interest in any of those. The second being that some economically deprived school systems might have trouble with gaining access to technologies for each of the students. So some possible research questions. Will the interest that the student develops in geometry carry over to other math classes? And will it carry over to other math classes if the theme of applying math to the student's interest is transferred as well? Another question is, how does using math in real life scenarios affect success rates in our world rankings? If we were to carry this theme of applying math to students' interests, will that increase their success rates, and will that make our students more successful in math when compared to the nation's other developed countries? So some potential challenges I might face is that the way I'm envisioning this software acting and looking would require extremely sophisticated coding, which requires skills that I do not have, so I'd have to find someone with that level of expertise. And then pushback from traditionalists on how geometry is taught. There may be traditionalists who still think that the best way to teach geometry is to just draw a circle up on the board and with, write pi r squared up there, or 2 pi r for the circumference. And there might just be pushback on how they want to teach things in their own classroom.